Okay, friends. In the first series of our classes on our elective subject, that is crop production, because of limitation of the classes, we could not learn in detail. So we have been asked to, and we have been provided some extra classes to cover the uncovered subjects. So let us use these extra classes to learn the topics that we did not dealt with in detail, or rather covered superficially. So today we will learn about the millets. That is, we covered about cereals. That is, 3 cereals were there: rice, wheat, and maize was there, and we covered them a bit detail, and we could not touch these millets topic in detail. So that's why we will cover this one hour time, knowing more about the millets, and also we will learn about the important pulses. In pulses also, we rushed through. So in today's class, during the next 60 minutes, we will learn about the millets and also pulses. Okay, now coming to millets, in syllabus, we have 4 millets, important millets. That is, sorghum is there, pearl millet is there, ragi is there, and the foxtail millet, that is korra. These are the 4 millets that are included in your syllabus. Now, these, to begin with, sorghum. Sorghum is otherwise known as jowar, it's very popular across India, though its consumption is more in South India when compared to North India, because in North India, they take the wheat in the form of bread. But in South India and also western part of India, we take these millets in the form of roti or in the form of, like rice and other, forms. Now, this jowar, as you know, is an important and most important millet, and it is consumed across the world. It is popular even in African countries, and it is believed that it originated in African continent only. Now, because of its hardiness, that is, it can withstand drought. So because in most of the areas across the world, even today, larger portion of the cultivable land depends on rains. Now this sorghum in India, it is mostly cultivated in UP, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, parts of Bihar, and more specifically in Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra, and parts of Tamil Nadu and Orissa. These are the areas where sorghum cultivation is taken up on large scale. Now, when compared to the acreage, it is next to your rice. As far as the yield is concerned, it ranks third after rice and wheat. It ranks third in terms of yield. Now coming to soils, of course, climate, it requires tropical climate. Generally, it needs hot and humid climatic conditions, and because of the availability of high yielding short duration varieties, now farmers are cultivating them throughout the year. That is in 3 seasons. That is in Rabi, of course, in Kharif, Rabi, and summer. But mostly, mostly it is a Kharif crop, which is mostly cultivated during the southwest monsoon. During southwest monsoon, with the onset of monsoon or early showers, the cultivation or sowing of the sorghum is taken up in the last week of July, in the last week of May, and it will be continued till the end of June. Generally, if you sow them a bit late, that is, if you sow them in the month of July, generally yield, not only yield will be less, but it gets infestation of pests and diseases. Both fungal and insect pests attack them and resulting in a drastic cut in the sorghum yield. Now this sorghum, it is popular not only for its seed, but also its forage. It is the vegetative parts. After taking out your heads or the seeds, now whatever the vegetative part, that is stems and leaves that are there, they are preferred by cattle when compared to other forage material, roughage materials. And this is most sought after by the farmer for his cattle. Now, even in terms of dry matter also, it is far superior when compared to other cereals and millets. Its dry matter is very high. Now, coming to the soils, generally soils which are not fit for rice, wheat, or maize, in those soils, one can take up the cultivation of sorghum, because sorghum comes well even if there are long droughts. If there are no rains also for 15 to 20 days in rainy season, it can withstand. Now, generally, black cotton soils with moisture retaining capacity and laterite red soils are also suitable for raising sorghum. Now, generally, as I told you, Kharif, generally sowing is taken up in the month of last week of May to that of June. Now, before the onset of monsoon, generally, farmer makes his field ready by doing 2 or 3 ploughings, followed by leveling by using a blade harrow. So he prepares his land well, so that if there are 1 or 2 showers, that is sufficient for him to sow the seed. Generally, seed sowing is done primarily through what we call seed drillers. Generally, seed drillers are used for sowing this. In some areas, of course, in case of Rabi, generally, which is taken up as a second crop, and the sowing is taken up in the month of October, generally, their sowing can be through what we call a seed driller, and also dribbling the seed behind your plow is also the other method of sowing of sorghum. Now, coming to the traditional varieties, the traditional good olden varieties are they take longer periods for maturity. They come for harvest 150 to 160, 170 days. But now, with the intervention of scientists, they could produce many high-yielding varieties, high-yielding hybrid varieties, which are of short duration and which are short in stature. They can withstand, gales. Now, coming to the weeds, generally weeding is taken up after planting, after the plantation or after the sowing of seeds. After 25 30 days, first weeding is done. Thereafter, after 40-45 days, second weeding can be taken up. But here, you can either get rid of your weeds by physically removing the weeds, or you can employ what we call blade harrows. The billet-drawn blade harrows, a set of 3, is generally is used in intercultivation of what we call sorghum. Now, generally, the sorghum responds well for the fertilizer. Say if you have enough farmyard manure, you can transport your farmyard manure into the field, and you can get it mixed into the soil by using your plow. Ploughing, makes the thorough mixing of the farmyard manure you have added to the field. Then, of course, nowadays, as day by day the cattle population is going down, and people are preferring, chemical fertilizers. Using chemical fertilizers, of course, has to be a last resort. But of course, you can use this both in the form of complex fertilizers and also as a single fertilizer of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash. Generally, the sorghum responds well for the chemical fertilizers. Generally, if it is a kharif crop, generally we don't need any irrigation. But if it is taken up as a Rabi crop, generally, if there are hot days, if the moisture content goes down, then if water is available, if you can give one or two floodings, of course, you will get good yields. Now, coming to in examination, generally they'll ask you to write about what we call the hybrid seed preparation of jowar. Now, generally, good olden days, people used to, keep some of the seed from the threshold areas, that is seed threshing areas. They used to collect and they used to clean, and they used to preserve that seed for the next crop. But now, now people are preferring this hybrid. Now, the hybrid production, generally involves crossing of two, parents. Generally, one is what we call a male sterile parent. The other is a male fertility restorer parent. And generally, these male sterile parent, they are sown in 6 lanes, and then 2 rows of restorer gene having male fertile lines are sown, and the sowing is taken up in such a way that both of them come for blossoming. That is, they get ready for maturity of the flowers, and your transfer of the pollen from the male restorer gene can be transferred easily onto the stigma of the male sterile, male sterile lines, or the plots. So what you are doing here, you are selectively transferring the pollen from the male restorer lines to the male sterile lines. So because of that, you get a hybrid that is F1 seed, which is having heterosis, or which has superior qualities when compared to both the parents. So because there is a danger, if you use the same seed, there is a danger of what we call segregation. Because of segregation, generally second crop will not be of that quality, both in terms of yield and other parameters. So that's why farmers are advised to buy F1 seeds only from the seed agencies. Now, this is regarding the method of production of sorghum hybrid seeds. Now, generally, this sorghum suffers from, our I told you our traditional varieties come for harvest 150 to 170 days, but the hybrid varieties, they come for harvest up to 120 to 130 days is sufficient for you to get your crop ready for harvest. Now, this sorghum suffers from various pests and diseases. To mention, diseases are like your grain smut, that is your cover smut is there, your loose smut is there, your rust diseases are there, and the downy mildews are there. And coming to your pests, generally the important pests are shoot fly, stem borer, and midge, or earhead bug, and the sugary disease. These are the pests generally found on in all the sorghum growing areas. Now, generally yield, yield is of if you give, in case of Rabi, if you give 1 or 2 irrigations, your yield will be more than 40 to 60 quintals per hectare. Now, the other important feature of sorghum you have to learn keeping your exam is retooning. Now, retoon crop. See, there are only primarily 2 crops where this retooning is taken up. One is your sugarcane, the other is sorghum. So here, if you want to raise your second crop without sowing the seed, here what the farmer does, when his field comes for harvest, when sorghum is ready for harvest, he cuts, the stems by leaving the stubble, to around, 10 to 15 centimeters above the ground. So he cuts here. Now, using the moisture that is there, so generally it has to be done a little bit early. So when the leaves are not completely dried, that is when they are just turning yellow. Now that is the right time to cut this. So, and these cut portions are, of course, they are taken to the area where the threshing is taken up, and these sorghum stubules, they sprout, and within 2 months, or within 2 months or so, 2.5 months, they come, they grow well, and even you get heads. So even you get a good yield even in second crop by what we call retooning. Now, of course, Rabi crop, Rabi crop, generally it is taken up in the month of October, generally soon after the harvest of your first crop, or in some cases, the field is left as fallow. And if that is the case, the second sowing of the second crop can be taken up a bit early. That is in the last week of your September, or in by the first or second weeks of October is the ideal time for sowing the Rabi crop. Now, this can be either grown as a solo crop, or in some cases, it is taken up as a mixed crop. It can also be grown as a mixed crop, or intercropping can be done. And this sorghum, and with what we call green gram, black gram in some areas, sorghum come red gram can also be taken as intercultivation, or as a mixed cropping pattern. This can be taken up. So now we move to what we call the second millet, that is bajra. Bajra is otherwise known as pearl millet because the seeds look like pearls. If you look at the head, the seeds are very small, of course. They're very beautiful, and they look like small pearls. That's why the name pearl millet. And scientific name is it is Penicillium typhoide. Penicillium typhoides is the scientific name, and it comes like other cereals and millets. It falls under Graminae or Poaceae family. Now, this bajra, bajra is a bit more drought tolerant when compared to other millets. So that's why it is taken up. It is grown on a large tracts in drought prone areas of Rajasthan, western parts of Gujarat, and coming to south, even western Uttar Pradesh, and coming to south, the Rayalaseema areas, and drought prone districts of Telangana, such as Mahabubnagar, Rangareddy, and even in coastal that is north coastal of Srikakulam, Vijayanagaram. These are some areas where the bajra cultivation is taken up. Now, here, as far as the food value is concerned, it is far more superior when compared to others. It is very rich in calcium, phosphorus, and generally, this using this either it is taken either in the form of what we call bajra rotis or malt, etc. And generally, there will the all ages, people of all ages, from your childhood to old age people, this bajra forms a good staple food. Now, generally, it is mostly grown as a kharif crop, but if water is available, even you can take this in rabi also. Now, as far as the forage is concerned, it is of course not so good as a sorghum, but even if it is cut a bit early and the leaves are green, even it is a preferred roughage for the cattle. Now, generally, it too responds well for fertilizer. Generally, complex fertilizers can be used, or nitrogen and phosphorus and potash can be added at different intervals. Now, this yield will be a bit less when compared to other, and in some cases, you get 8 to 10 quintals of this bajra under ideal conditions. Under rainfall conditions, of course, it goes up to 15 to 20 quintals per hectare. Now, generally, now this, it comes for harvest in 90 days or so. 90 to 100 days is the time for the harvest. Now, generally, it suffers from certain diseases. Generally, it has what we call, ergot is there, and even what we call, it suffers from green ear disease. Sclerospora gravinicola is that, and even it suffers from certain rust and smut diseases also, like your sorghum. And so the best way to protect your field is by going for what we call seed treatment. Before sowing, the seed has to be treated with either agrosone or cerazone or thiram. By treating your seed with this, you can check various, fungal diseases. Now, this is about bajra. Of course, then we move to what we call ragi. Ragi, its scientific name is Eleusine coracana and is otherwise known as finger millet. Now, head looks like this. Fingers like. That's why the name finger millet. Now, finger millet, and this is very, very rich in calcium and iron. So that's why mostly, nowadays people are preferring for millets nowadays, because nowadays health consciousness has gone up more so because of our COVID pandemic, and people are, people mostly remained indoors. So that's why a little bit, stationary life led to what we call putting heavy weight because of less movement, least exercise, made them to gain a little bit weight. And that's why other problems, that is obese, and generally what we call constipation, what we call diabetes. So these are the three common, nowadays diseases that are commonly found in every household. Now, you can check all these three. That is, you can reduce your weight, obese can be reduced, and you can check the progression of what we call your sugar, blood sugar can be checked. And even because all these millets are very rich in what we call fiber content. So they are rich in protein, they are rich in minerals, and also rich in what we call fiber. So because of the heavy fiber in them, even you can check your the constipation problem also. Now this finger millet, now you'll be wondering, if you go to any a big shop, there, you find these, the cost of your ragi, your jowar or your bajra is more than your what we call your rice and wheat. Your rice and wheat flours get you less price than what we call millets. Now, people used to call them, poor man's diet. In 30, 40 years ago, generally poor men from villages used to take this, but rich people living in cities, they never used to touch that. But now, after realizing their food value, because of the advice of the doctors, now there is a trend to shift their food habits from cereals to what we call millets. So the demand has gone up, and even farmers are getting good remunerative prices, and you can get a bit more by cleaning your seed thoroughly and going for good packing techniques, and also adding a little bit preservatives, etc. You can enhance their shelf life. They can be sold in after vacuum packing. They can be preserved a bit long. So if you go to any supermarket, any big market, in all the big markets, you find the availability of all these millets either in the form of seed or in the form of flour. Now, this, the other important feature you have to remember when you study ragi is that unlike other millets, this ragi in certain features shares the rice, because like rice, it can also be transplanted. Transplantation can be taken up even in ragi. So ragi can be sown in the form of what we call seed sowing in the form of seed driller or by dribbling method. But the other is, if a good water facility is there, you can raise your nursery in advance and you prepare your field. Then you can go for what we call transplantation. It has been proved that by transplantation, the yield is roughly 1.5%. So 1.5% extra you get, that is 50% will be more. So if you get 10 quintals, and as far as in transplantation, you get 15 quintals. So this is possible because of transplantation. The space you maintain the space, and you give fertilizer, and the plant does not suffer from drought, etc. So as you are checking the field at regular intervals, and that's why the yield will be much more than your rain-fed crop. Now this is about what we call. So you have to remember here, this can be taken up as through what we call dry cropping or dry cultivation or upland cultivation. But the other is even lowland or cultivation can be taken up in the form of what we call transplantation technique. Now, it also been proved that it responds well when you give fertilizer, either in the form of your farm manure or your chemical fertilizers, that is your complex fertilizers or fertilizers of NPK singly. The yield has been 7 to 8 quintals per hectare. Now, the last one is what we call foxtail millet. Here the head is like this. It bends like this. So that's why the name foxtail. Now it is what we call Citeria italica is the scientific name, and it also falls under Poaceae. And here the seeds are very small. When they are almost of the size of ragi. Ragi are almost your rust color or maroon color. But this korra, what we call in common korra or foxtail millet, they are gold color. Now, even if you cook them, your rice will be gold colored and quite tasty. And this because it is very rich in minerals and also very rich in fiber. So that's why people suffering from obese, your constipation, and also sugar diseases, they to prefer this korra. Now, this can be either raised as a solo crop, or in some cases, it can be raised as it is mixed with what we call ragi, jowar, castor, and other pulses. Now, mostly this korra, this can be taken up as a kharif crop, and this can also be grown in Rabi. And the sowing is generally taken up in the month of, if it is a Rabi, generally in the last week of September or so. Now, one important point you have to remember regarding sorghum, sorghum you have to remember. In exam also they may ask you, because the young plants of 1.5 months, if there is a drought, severe drought, there are no rains, in such a condition, the plants of 30 or 40 days old, suffering from drought, generally they have high glucoside content in their leaves. And if the cattle they feed on these young plants, they suffer from what we call, stomach ache, bloating of the stomach, because the glucosides, they get, they get broken into what we call hydrocyanic acid, HCN, or prussic acid. So this prussic acid or hydrocyanic acid, these are the result of what we call the breaking of glucosides. So farmer has to be very careful and see that his cattle does not go to the sorghum growing areas which are of 30 or 40 days old. Now the bajra, of course I told you, even like bajra, even the korra also suffers from certain diseases like your smart rust disease are there. And the best way to keep this disease at bay is going for what we call seed treatment. Go for seed treatment with Cerason or Thiron, etc. By Thiron or Cerason, Aggresson, by doing seed treatment, if you sow them, of course, you can check your crop from the infestations from the fungus. So this is about the millets. Then we move to pulses. Now pulses, our carbohydrate and pulse. In every meal, you find what we call roti and dal, everywhere, or roti khana. So rice and your dal is there, or your bread and dal is there. They go together because rice or roti, what we call, they are rich in carbohydrates, poor in proteins. So our body needs the energy givers, that is your carbohydrate, and your muscle builder is your proteins. So that's why in every meal, generally we see that it is rich in not only carbohydrate, but also rich in your proteins and fats. So now for protein content, we depend on pulses. So pulses are rich in proteins. Of course, this does not mean they don't have any carbohydrate. Of course, they have good amount of carbohydrate, but apart from that, they are very rich in what we call proteins. Now, this in syllabus we have 4 pulses. One is what we call black gram is there, green gram is there, red gram is there, and last one is what we call Bengal gram. These 4 grams are there. Let us begin with even black gram. Of course, black gram is otherwise known as Vigna mungo. Vigna mungo, or earlier name was Phaseolus mungo, which belongs to what we call Fabaceae. Fabaceae members, and of course, the pulses generally they don't need fertilizers. Why? Because they have root nodules in them, and nodules are found with the infestation of what we call rhizobium, which has the ability to convert atmospheric nitrogen into nitrate form. Thus, it enriches your soil. So that's why the amount of fertilizer that you are needed to add to your soil gets reduced. So now this Vigna mungo or Phaseolus mungo is our black gram. But of course, black gram, because they are black, generally we use black gram, but there are certain varieties which are green too. That is, they are green in color. So primarily there are 2, of course there are even 3-4 varieties are there. Some are what we call brown colored are also available, but mostly you are black. So your green is also there, green and black, and they are very rich in proteins. Now they are grown, now they are grown on large tracts of soil in Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Tamil Nadu areas. And as far as our Telugu states are concerned, Krishna, Guntur, Godavari districts, delta soils. There, this is taken up on a large scale. And as far as your Telangana is concerned, it is grown in Medak and Nizamabad, some areas of your Mahbubnagar, Rangareddy. These are the areas where the black gram cultivation is taken up on a large scale. Generally, they need block cotton soils. Generally, block heavy soils are very good. Of course, loamy soils are quite ideal for raising your black gram. And generally, this is primarily grown as a kharif crop. But of course, in Andhra areas, in delta areas, this is taken up as a second crop, as a relay crop, or as a sequential crop in the rice fallows. So if it is sown after the harvest of your first crop, that is rice, it is called what we call sequential crop. And before you sow, you harvest your first crop rice, if you spread, if you put the either in the form of sprout or otherwise, if you spread them or spray them into your field in advance, that we call what we call a relay cropping. So relay cropping means here generally second crop. So it can be grown as a what we call as a kharif crop, as a first crop, and also as a second crop. But if irrigation facility is there, if your well water is there, your tube wells are there, there you can also take it up as a summer crop too, because nowadays pulses are priced very high. So farmers are getting good, good money, making good money by taking up this pulse cultivation. Now, generally, this black gram, it comes up well in all types of soils, but of course, generally black soils, as I told you, black and loamy soils are very deltoic soils, alluvial soils are very ideal for them. Now, generally, I already told you, being a leguminous crop, the fertilizer requirements are very, very less. And generally, it comes for harvest within 70 to 90 days. And the yields are very good, ranging from 7 to 20 quintals per hectare or 2 to 3 quintals per acre. Now, generally, they suffer from. Now, these, this suffers from what we call so many pests and diseases. And of course, your diseases like your powdery mildews are there, and leaf spot is there, anthracnose disease is there. And coming to your pests, pod bug is there, aphids are there, and they cause a lot of damage to the crop. So now the best way is to go for what we call high yielding varieties such as and disease resistant and high yielding varieties such as Pusa. Pusa is there, and of course Pushkara is there, and Ekasila is there, and Kona wheat. So these are some of the high yielding and disease resistant varieties that are very common in Telugu states. Now, generally, I told you intercultivation has to be taken up. That is, intercultivation is the thing, but getting rid of weeds. Now, because the plant grows very fast, that's why the first weeding has to be taken up within 20 to 25 days after seeding, and second can be taken after 40 days or so. When it is in flowering, that is the time to take up what we call second weeding. Of course, because if it is a kharif crop, no irrigation is needed. But if it's a Rabi crop, if soil suffer from moisture, then if you give one or two irrigations, you get good yields. Now, generally, harvesting, is very either the matured parts are plucked, or the entire plant is cut by using sickles, and it will be taken to a threshing area where threshing will be done either by using cattle or by using sticks. This can be done. And generally the vegetative parts, they can be used as a feed for the cattle. Now, generally, the pests, I already told you, the gram caterpillar is there, and pod borer are there, and pod bugs are there, aphids are there. These generally cause a lot of damage. Now, coming to the economic importance, the what we call the black gram is very popular in South India when compared to North India, because this forms an important ingredient of all your breakfast dishes. Your idli, your dosha, your vada, in all of them, all of these preparations, this forms an important ingredient. And even in sweets, what we call the sunna undalu, there the important ingredient is your black gram. So then we move to what we call, of course, green gram. Of course, the green gram is very similar to your black gram, but when compared to protein content, is superior to green gram is superior to your black gram. Here the protein content will be around 25%. Of course, the maturation time, etc., harvesting, all are of course similar. And this, apart from what we call, they are grown not only for seeds, but also they are grown as a what we call green manure. Now, generally, if the soil is not fertile, in such cases, heavy seed content is used in raising this either green gram or black gram. And when they reach what we call some 25 or 30 centimeters high, and just before what we call flowering, blossoming takes place, then farmer plows this entire plants into the soil, and he allows these vegetative part to get rotten into the soil, thereby they add to the fertility of the soil. So it can be used, it can be grown not only for its seeds, not only for its fodder, but also for what we call as a green manure. Now this can also, these two crops, that is both green gram, black gram, they are also used to check what we call soil erosion. As a soil binder, as a soil erosion checker, they can be grown. Okay, then we move to what we call the red gram. Red gram generally is very popular in South India. So generally, our daily food. Generally, your roti or your rice dal or roti dal. Your in South India, generally dal means dal made of your red gram only. So red gram is your PGNP. In English, it is known as PGNP, and its scientific name is Khajana, a member of Fabaceae. Now, generally, when compared to other, that is, when compared to your green gram, black gram, and your Bengal gram, it is a bit, it comes for harvest a bit late. It needs more than 100 days, 120 days. It takes 120 days for harvest. So generally, it is either grown as a solo crop or as a mixed crop. As a mixed crop or as a solo crop, this is taken up, and generally it is grown across the world, generally in West Indies, Sri Lanka, India, China, Pakistan, or even in African countries, even Burma. These are the areas where the red gram cultivation is taken up on a larger scale. But of course, in the world, about 90% of the red gram is grown only in India, and more than 70% of its produce is consumed in the South India only. Now, as far as India is concerned, Maharashtra ranks first, followed by Andhra Pradesh, and generally, in case of good yields, generally Maharashtra ranks first, followed by Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh. Though it is grown in Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, and parts of Rajasthan, but its consumption is almost very, very limited. It will be sent to South India only, South Indian markets. Now, in Telugu states in Andhra Pradesh, of course, it is grown in Srikakulam, Vijayanagaram areas and parts of Guntur and Nellore areas. In Telangana, it is very popular. It is grown in Adilabad, Mahabunagar, Rangareddy, and in Rangareddy generally, Vikarabad, Tandur. These are the areas where this is grown on a large scale, and Tandur market is famous for both jowar and also for red gram. Now, generally, this PGM-free, what we call red gram, is a drought-resistant one, and generally, this is grown as a kharif crop. Mostly, it is grown as a kharif crop only because it needs more than 4 months for harvest. So, generally, raising second crop is very a bit difficult. Now, all types of soils, but of course, except saline alkaline soils are suitable for, and generally heavy black soils, heavy soils, and alluvial and loamy soils are very good for the cultivation of this. And generally, I told you 90% of the crop is grown as a kharif crop, but in some areas it can be grown as a the hybrid varieties. Nowadays, hybrid early maturing hybrid varieties are there. They can be used for raising second crop, that is your Ravi crop. Now, generally, the lands, of course, for growing all your pulses, generally, land has to be prepared in advance. Generally, land preparation 2 or 3 ploughings are done, especially during the summer. When there are pre-monsoon showers are there, then by using heavy country plow or by using tractors, cultivators, etc., this ploughing is taken up, and then by using blade harrows, it is leveled, and field should be kept ready. So if there are 2 or 3 showers, rains are there, if sufficient moisture is there, then you can go for raising of your PGNP either as a solo crop or as a mixed crop along with jowar, etc. So now generally, generally high yielding and disease resistant varieties are there, and generally Palnadu is there, and Lakshmi is there, Asha is there, and Durga. These are some of the high yielding, disease resistant varieties which are very popular in Telugu states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. Now, generally, I told you already, it is rarely grown as a pure crop, but mostly it is grown as a, as a mixed crop, as an intercrop, along with the maize, sorghum, and bajra, and in some areas even along with the groundnut and black gram also is grown as an intercrop. Now, generally, uh, of course, the pulses does not need what we call rhizobium cultures or not that. But if you're taking up this pulse cultivation for the first time, then you are advised to take what we call rhizobium cultures in advance. You now by using various methods of rhizobium inoculation, seed treatment has to be done by rhizobium cultures. Then you can sow them into your field. Now, this if it is a pure crop or otherwise also, generally the distance, because when compared to others, it is a well branched. The plant is well branched, and of course it spreads to almost 1 meter or so. So that's why the distance between the two rows will be more than 1 meter. 1.5 meter is the ideal distance between the two rows. And generally, because they are placed apart from each other, so farmers do weedings by using what we call blade harrows, or because distance is quite big, by using bullet drawn blade harrows, what we call guntakas, he can remove whatever the weed that is there in between the rows. Now, generally, the harvest, when it comes for harvest, generally you will see a shedding of all the leaves, and generally drying and shedding will be there. And that is the time for cutting of the plants. Generally, they are by using sickles, generally they are cut and they'll be bundled and taken to the threshing areas. And generally after, either by using cattle or by beating with the sticks, generally after you get your seeds, and generally the husk and other material, the vegetative material that is there, that can be used as a feed. That can be used as a feed for the cattle, and the dry sticks, that is main stem branches, etc., that are there, they can be used as a fuel, especially if you are going for what we call jaggery making, or your what we call turmeric. Now there you can use this as the dried stem pods can be used as a fuel. The last one is, of course, the Bengal gram, otherwise known as chickpea, and generally this is mostly grown as a rabi crop. Those three are mostly grown as kharif crops, but of course the chickpea or the Bengal gram is mostly grown as a rabi crop. Generally, it is sown in the month of September last week to October, and generally as a rabi crop, this can be either grown as a solo crop or as a mixed crop. Generally, this is along with the Bengal gram. Generally, this your what we call sorghum can be done, or your maize can be used, and also the other your what we call uh, uh, your avisha is the other thing that can be used here. And of course, this, though it is grown in South India also, but its consumption is more in the North India. As far as the yields are concerned, as far as the acreage is concerned, generally it is mostly grown in Madhya Pradesh, because it needs heavy black cotton soils, and which are available in Madhya Pradesh, and in parts of Uttar Pradesh and parts of Rajasthan. There, this is grown on large tracts of soil, and also in Maharashtra, in Karnataka, even in Andhra Pradesh, this is grown as a second crop or as a what we call Rabi crop. Now, of course, across the world, generally Southeast Asia, generally Persia or Afghanistan are considered to be the places where this crop first got originated. Now it is grown across the world in Italy, Romania, Egypt, and Romania, Rhodesia, Iran, Iraq are some of the areas where this is grown. Of course, your chana, there are two, what we call Kabuli chana is there. It is also Caesar arietinum, a member of Fabaceae. Now this, your Afghanistan, your Iran, these are the Iraq are the areas, your Nile, where Nile River flows, where the soils are very rich. In those rich soils, the Bengal gram or your chickpea is grown on larger acreage. Now in Andhra Pradesh, generally it is grown in block soils where in Kurnool area, in Kadapa areas, it is grown. And in Telangana, generally in Nizamabad, Medak, and some parts of Rangareddy, Mahunagar, where block cotton soils are there. And generally, it needs cool weather. When compared to other, they need hot weather. But unlike those three, that is your red gram, black gram, and green gram, the Bengal gram needs cool temperature. So these cool temperatures are available only in October, November. So that's why it is mostly taken up as a Rabi crop. It is a winter crop. So now, of course, the land has to be prepared. If it is a second crop, and after the harvest of the first crop, this is taken up. And if it is a fallow, and early sowing can be taken up in the last week of September to first week of October. Now, good number of varieties are there, which are early duration and disease resistant. To name them, Kranti is there, and Sweta is there, Jyoti. These are the high yielding, early maturing varieties. Now, but of course, I told you this is taken up as a Rabi crop. If there are drought-like situations, if the moisture content of your soil falls, then if you have irrigation facility, then if you give one or two irrigations, you get a bumper yield. Now, generally, this is not only your seed, but even young leaves. The young leaves, which are very rich in what we call oxalic acid, and they can be used what we call for treating what we call your digestive problems. This is used. So digestive problems can be checked by taking these young leaves. Young leaves of you can make you can use them to treat for, because they are rich in what we call oxalic acid and malic acid. And these sprouts of Bengal gram nowadays, they are used because they are very rich in your vitamin C, and they are used to cure what we call scurvy. So now this I told you as a alone or along with what we call a mixed crop or intercrop along with barley. If it is in North India, generally with barley and with wheat, it is even what we call linseed. Even in along with safflower and other mustard also. Along with them, it is grown. And generally, the important diseases are what we call pod borer is there, of course, wilt disease. Wilt disease is the disease generally use of this crop suffers. Of course, there are rust also, Euromyces is there, causes rust disease, and fusarium is there, that causes what we call the wilt of your chickpea. And of course, the what we call plume moth is there, pod fly is there, spotted pod borer is there. These are some of the pests that are commonly encountered on all the chickpea growing areas. Of course, as I told you, Bengal gram, though it is grown equally in North India and South India, but its consumption is more in North India. It is not only used grown for its dal, but also seeds sprout in the form of sprouts they are taken. And as already told you, they can be even green leaves of this chickpea can be used as a vegetable. And you are what we call the floor of the Bengal gram, what we call basin. That forms an important constituent of so many hot preparations like your murku, your bhaji or mirchi, etc. Even in sweets also, in bundi making, sweet making, in all the sweets, it forms an important constituent. So this is about what we call important pulses. So in today's class, we discussed about the important millets, that is jowar, bajra, ragi and korra, and of course the pulses, green gram, black gram, red gram, and Bengal gram. So this is about today, and of course we will meet tomorrow at the same time, and we will discuss about the oil seeds tomorrow, because oil seeds are also very important and very highly remunerative. Of course, they form important in the kitchen, and so that's why they give what we call all edible oils we get from them. So tomorrow we will confine about our class to knowing about the vegetable oil yielding crops. So this is about today's class, and if you have any doubt on today's class or the topics which we have already covered, you can ask me your doubts. If there are no doubts, then we will call it a day, and hope to meet you tomorrow, same time.